We had like incredible times. Who gets to work with Oprah Winfrey for 12 years? We were the only country outside of America that had that, right to publish her brand. It was the end of an era. I had funded our business with my mother from my own pocket. And one thing I have to say is, as soon as you're funding business yourself, that's when you really learn.
What did you learn about Julia?
I think for me was really important was that I can reinvent myself. I learned being an opportunistic thinker. If you're an opportunistic thinker, you go into any situation and you find the opportunity. You just get up. Every day is day one. If you process stuff properly, you're generally going to have a better outcome.
I'm jumping out of my skin because you are here, Julia.
I know, me too.
Hi.
Nice
I
to
have
meet
come
you.
all the way to Cape Town.
Thank you.
For you.
Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. So I always like to explore why people say yes to having this conversation. Not because I don't want you to have it, but I just want to understand, why was this a conversation you're happy to have?
A few reasons, but mainly because it's such an interesting subject. And I think, when you first hear the word, you've got, it's like a dirty word, but it's so the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think having watched quite a few of the past podcasts, I was so inspired because everyone's story was unique and interesting, and the angles, and it made me think about failure again, and how as a concept, it's so multi-layered.
Yeah.
So I got more and more interested in the subject, but also because you're a bestie of another bestie, and I trust her, and she was just like, you have to do this, and I just said yes, because I'm a yes person.
Yeah, thank you so much. What is failure to Julia?
The thing is with failure, for me, I wouldn't say it doesn't bother me, because it bothers you at the time a lot. But when you look back, you can always see where you've learned, where you've grown. And failure to me, I wouldn't say that the little failures or the little hiccups are remembered. It's more like if there's a major turning point in your life where you had to make a difficult decision. That could be divorce, it could be changing jobs, it could be anything that's really material. Those failures I remember. But because they were so fundamental. But the other sort of hiccups or challenges or things that didn't go right, that's more based on, say, the concept of intelligent failure, where if you like to innovate, and I think especially in business you have to be an innovator, not just a leader, but innovation's so important, especially these days. It's not ever going to work out 100%. So for me, that concept, which I started to understand quite a long time ago in my own career, that concept of intelligent failure, it became like a positive thing. So in my mind, it wasn't ever a negative thing. It was more positive.
Yeah. And growing up, what was failure then?
Well, it's quite interesting being in a family business, because with its eccentricities and its pros and cons, I would say, a lot of people ask me, was I pressurized to go into the family business? And I actually never was. But in our family, everybody had an opinion, and it was very noisy dinner table, and everybody talking a lot. And I think we were really encouraged to be entrepreneurial and also to work hard.
Yeah.
So when you're kind of a hard worker, I mean, my father especially, he was, had a factory, and he just didn't believe in holidays, which was very depressing. Every time I went on holiday, he couldn't understand where you're going.
And your friends out having fun on the beach.
Yeah. He could just always, when I came back, so what did you really get out of that trip, So I think what it meant growing up was going for it. And, we had both my parents worked. My mother was a role model and an inspiration, because she just loved what she did.
Yeah.
So I think because she was so passionate about her career, it kind of filtered down.
Yeah.
So I also was the third child, so kind of easier in terms of the position in the family. And I just kind of went for it. I mean, I didn't really question it. And then I was in New York, came back and started in the family business, and then by the time like you realize what you've actually signed up for, you're like so deeply stuck in. And I'd been there for 28 years when we actually closed the business. So that was a long time in a family business. But that's another subject for your next podcast.
I love it. I'm ready for the next one. So I want to explore the dynamics of working with family.
Yeah.
And where, you've got to call each other out or check each other out in terms of delivering. How do you have that performance conversation with mom? How do you have that conversation with dad? Because obviously, I can imagine it being quite hard because there is a love and there is a kindness and a blood connection that sometimes, I don't know if family bosses or related members of family can really hold each other accountable. How did you guys navigate that?
I think family businesses are really tricky because, especially if you're in a family business of a long period of time, I do think that kids, second generation family businesses, kids should have worked in other businesses and got experience elsewhere. I think it's good for them, and I think it's good for the business, and I think it's good for the parents. But one thing I saw with my mother, and it's so interesting you say, how do you have that conversation? Because you start off needing to be mentored by your parents. But if you're in the family business for a long time, my mother was in her 80s when we closed the business. So you then going through somebody handing over the baton. And she was so graceful and gracious in how she handed over power. Because you can imagine, I mean, she was British, and she came here because of my father. And she started, Fair Lady, and then she left Naspers and she went and started Cosmo. And Cosmo was the first glossy title on, in the country. And it was really her baby. And then she went on to obviously build the business with other titles. So to be able to hand over power, like with the grace that she had, is quite incredible because it's a hard thing to give up, and see somebody else put their stamp onto it. And my sister, Vanessa, who I worked with for many years as well, she was an incredibly talented editor. And she took over from my mom. And I mean, that's quite a thing, like you're in a very visible position. A lot of people can criticize and stand from the sidelines. And she did a brilliant job. So luckily, I think, there wasn't much sort of calling into line. But I would say that we had to fight for, like, even market-related salaries, And
Really?
there's always, absolutely.
I'm imagining, Mom, I'm working hard and I love you, but please can I get paid more?
Yeah.
So you are not paying me fairly.
Yeah. Those kind of conversations are difficult because as your parents, they think never mind everyone else, they think you've actually like landed with your bum in the butter and you're going to have to work for this.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, again, those were very good principles. And so I think as, the business also took different turns, like the S-curve in a business, we had like incredible times. I mean, who gets to work with Oprah Winfrey for 12 years? I mean,
wild.
And we were the only country outside of America that had that, right to publish her brand.
Magazine,
And obviously it was through her relationship with Mandela and also through, the school that she started here. But it was also through my mom's chutzpah, I would say. We always used to say that was one of our values. And I don't know if that, the audience is familiar with that word, but it kind of means cheek. Yeah. Like, you're going to go for it.
You dare yourself.
You dare
Why
yourself.
Not? Go where people
Just
don't
go. For
go.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, knock on someone's door and,
you
you think they'll probably answer. But anyway, so just that kind of thinking. And I remember we went there, we went to New York and we pitched. And, I had that kind of experience and that opportunity to work alongside my mother. And then when that was wonderful, but for 12 years it was wonderful. And then with digital, the model kind of changed and it didn't work for Oprah herself, maybe to have the brand here because it was across all platforms and she is the brand. So it's very different to doing a generic brand like Good Housekeeping or Cosmopolitan, So when we made that decision to close, and then digital really started to disrupt the business.
So in making the decision to pivot, and I've seen the conversations that you've had in terms of, the digital disruption happened,
Yeah.
who in the family could sense that first? Who could sniff that the world is changing? Because again, I'm still exploring that family dynamic, and one person in the family having a specific view,
Yeah.
which might be different to the other family members running the business.
Yeah. So I would say that we all kind of knew, because I mean, you're in the media and people are saying print is dead, and you know that those three words are quite definitive, and that was happening on the South Africa media front. It was happening on a global media front, and I think we all kind of knew it. But you know, when you've invested like so much into the brands, and we didn't run our business like a public company.
Yeah.
It was run like on chicken soup.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a very personal thing, so you don't want to give up. And I think what happened was, you know, it's how you embrace the change.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it becomes tricky to have everyone aligned,
Yeah.
because you know, you need very firm leadership, and you need visionary leadership, and that's not always aligned between old school, new school, across generations. You know, like we were more steeped into social media platforms because we were younger, so we were using them.
Yeah.
And the only way you can kind of look to the future is to be using all these new platforms.
Yeah.
And my parents were not maybe so comfortable with that, and so you had to lobby outside the boardroom. And then lobby inside the boardroom to get something, you know, like a new strategy approved.
Yeah.
But then eventually it was just actually my mother and myself in our business. And I decided to stay, for better or for worse. And then, you know, you start with a process of turnaround. And even turnaround is quite a bit longer than you think. It takes at least 2 years, especially when you're trying to turn a legacy business, which is like a tanker.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had 150 people in our business, and you need to introduce new skill sets and keep the old skill sets, which were more editorially based, transition across 8 platforms in the end. Do you know what? I learned a lot. I learned a lot. So
I want to explore if there was a time where you were afraid of the change, like you are saying, print media is dead. So when Julia goes to bed and you close your eyes and you are tossing and turning, some of us have anxiety that disrupts sleep because your brain is just trying to figure out stuff. What were your fears as Julia in that time?
I think not being able to restructure the business in time, because you've got the same big costs and overheads. Print is not a cheap business to be in, and you need new revenues and you need new skill sets, yet you still got your salary bills, you've got your overheads. So it's really like fueling a plane while flying. And I think you're also, some people, you know, didn't want to stay. They were leaving, they were coming. You know, you're putting in quite a high turnaround because it was tough. You know, we had the heyday. I mean, we were like, you know, having a wonderful time, but it was a 38-year-old business. So for the majority of time, we really were in such the pound seat. You know, we had brands that had incredible sway with their audience. They were trusted as a medium. And they were incredible platforms to showcase wonderful stories and people as they came up in the world. And, you know, but that was changing and being threatened on a daily basis. So everything keeps you up at night if you're responsible for people's careers, families, businesses. And, you know, I think when COVID came, that was, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but that was just that moment of clarity, which ended up being, in my example, a blessing.
Take us into the time you decided that the doors were closing. What
So-
was that day like?
So it was actually a 10-day decision, which is quite interesting, because I think if we hadn't put so much into investing in the business and keeping it going for so long, I think it would have been a lot harder. It was still a very hard decision, but it was almost like, because COVID was so weird for everyone,
For all of us.
for everyone, And we couldn't print our magazine because it was obviously a tangible and possible way of spreading COVID.
Yeah.
We couldn't distribute our magazine.
Yeah.
So the numbers just did not make sense because you didn't know when COVID was going to begin and end. Could have gone on, and it did go on for very long. And we had no means of generating revenue or producing our product. We had digital, which we carried on doing, and our engagement was wonderful, and the numbers were growing. But at that stage, you couldn't really monetize it like you can now.
Yeah.
So I think the thing is that it was kind of like, okay, like the facts were like laid out on the table because of COVID.
Couldn't deny them.
You couldn't deny them.
You couldn't hide them.
No. And I just felt, you know what, we gave it our absolute best shot.
Yeah.
And it was time. It was like a very funny thing because, as we all know, like sitting at home and not being able to actually speak to people really or face to face, you know, even when we sent out the press release and, you know, we said it was the end of an era, and it was. And people were so nostalgic about it because they'd grown up with magazines.
Yeah.
And also a lot of people had been through our doors through 38 years. You know, they'd kind of learned how to be a journalist or whatever, you know, been an intern or... and it was very difficult not being able to do it face to face.
Yeah.
But we had a small team of people, and I couldn't believe actually how empathetic people were. And I think that was also because of COVID, but also they, you know, realized like what we'd put into it. And at the end of our business, I mean, I had funded our business, you know, with my mother from my own pocket. And one thing I have to say is, as soon as you're funding a business yourself, that's when you really learn.
Yeah.
Not when there's a safety blanket or it's, you know, a pond which everybody's, you know, it's supporting the business. It's very different when you're funding it yourself. And I just couldn't justify carrying on putting more money into business that was coming out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
So I kind of, you know, had, I would say, limited choices.
Yeah.
And my mom supported my decision. And she was, as I said, in her 80s. So it was very sad, but it was also the right thing to do. And I think when you get that clarity, you know, if COVID hadn't come, maybe we would have carried on. And I would
maybe with fewer publications.
Well, we tried that too.
Okay.
But, you know, you also need, when you've got big overheads, you need every brand contributes.
Of course.
But the fact is, once you make the decision, you move on from there.
Yeah.
Like we know with any big decision.
Yeah.
And it was actually the right time.
Yeah. What did you learn about Julia? What Julia is capable of? Are there like 3 things you like that time taught me? 1, 2, 3 about myself.
So what I learned, which I think for me was really important, was that I can reinvent myself. And I had a great opportunity that came to me a few months later, and I had a great partner, and we just knew we would be in business together or work together, and we just said, let's just go for it, and we did. And that's the business we have together now. And I think the ability to reinvent on my own has been really an important lesson, because I loved working in a family business. But when you are on your own, and it's just so much quicker. I mean, every decision is like, I speak to my business partner, should we do it? Yes. Should we not do it?
It's a quick WhatsApp text, like,
It's
I'm
quick.
thinking this. Are you on board?
It's my decision.
Yeah.
And I don't have to convince anybody else.
Yeah.
And there's just no dynamic. It's
Yeah.
just a easier, streamlined business to work in, I think. I'm glad I worked in both. But so I learned that I could reinvent myself. The important thing I learned was actually how to, because I work from home now, and my kids are still young, they're 14. When I was working in a business where I went to work every single day and we had a lot of people, you know, I became a busy fool. And I remember working with this fantastic woman who's based in Durban, and she came down at the end. We were like, I needed some fresh eyes. And she was like, you know what? You're just becoming a busy fool.
A busy fool.
A busy fool. And
what does that mean? What is it
means,
to be a busy
fool? It means
fool?
that you're spending your time and energy in the wrong places.
Chasing your tail.
Because you've got a lot of, you know, people to manage, and you spread very thin. Instead of now, I've learned to play to my strengths. And luckily in my partnership with Lee, my business partner, she and we both complement each other. And she kind of totally supports me bringing value in a way that's so easy for me because I'm not spread.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not trying to do a million things. So that also allows me to put my time where I want to put it, which is also with my kids and being available to them and being present.
Yeah.
Because I actually stopped being present. I was so busy trying to kind of get this business through, across the line, and that you also don't really enjoy things. Because I think when you can be present again, you kind of like enjoy it because you're in the moment. So I learned about that, being present. That's two. Reinventing, that's one.
Yes.
And the third thing, what did I learn about myself? Let me see. I don't know. Learn every day different things.
I think there's something about you, like you're coming across to me as having the ability to move on.
Yeah.
You've talked about a decision is made, let's move on. And that, I think, is a beautiful gift to have.
Yeah.
A lot of people get stuck. I think when you were like, okay, 10 days, let's make a decision. What do you think about that, the ability to move on?
Yeah, I do have that ability, but like everybody, it's a process.
Yeah.
And believe me, people say to me, why are you still in the business? Why don't you sell the business, the family business, the media business? Why don't you leave, sell your share? And, I did stay quite long. And it did cost me financially.
Yeah.
But I learned that, this is the third thing,
Yes.
I can make the money back.
And
And I'm capable of finding an opportunity and going for it, and an opportunity that's the right opportunity for now. But I do think I'm quite forward-thinking. And also, I learned the value of being, this is the fourth thing.
Yeah, love that.
Never stop
Keep
at 3.
going.
Keep going.
Yes.
No, of being an opportunistic thinker. And I think that that's such a great muscle to, to utilize. Like, I always used to think after COVID, like the people who are actually going to survive, because a lot of people lost their jobs and, their world kind of crumbled. But if you're an opportunistic thinker, you go into any situation and you find the opportunity. And my mother was definitely like that. And I think I've got that in my DNA too.
Yeah.
So I just love it. It's like any situation, any conversation, I'm always thinking about what I can do with this. And I think that's what I kind of learned as well post-COVID.
Yeah.
And post-closing a business
Yeah.
and starting a new business.
Yeah. I want to explore reinvention.
Yeah.
You reinvented yourself. If there's a Julia who is in Durban listening to this podcast and is at a stage where they are thinking, I need to alter my ways and reinvent, what would you say they should think about and find their thing to reinvent into?
Well, again, it really for me is about understanding what you're actually really good at, instead of just doing where you find yourself, because as soon as you understand that, the effort is so much less. And, your return on your effort is so much better. I was used to say 20% effort, 80% return. I really do think it's understanding what you're naturally good at. What's your bullseye? And maybe, you need to do, a strengths finder or an Enneagram, or, just be open to learning about yourself. And then there's so much information available to us now to learn and to see if you're interested. You can do short courses, with the online access to information. It's so much better than when we grew up, it's just all there for you if you follow the trail. But try to follow the trail in the right direction. Although you might go off a few times.
And see a trail.
Yes.
Other people don't see a trail.
Yeah. And obviously, we've spoken about mentorship.
Yeah.
But, I had some great mentors, and I really believe in mentorship and finding someone who can hold you accountable. Someone who's objective, someone who helps you set out your intention.
Yeah. Yeah. How much time did you give yourself to be clear on the next thing?
I don't think you ever put a stopwatch on yourself in that way. You just get up, and then every day is a new day. Like every day is day one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think even, when we had lots of challenges and blows and this happened and that happened, but I always find like first sleep on it, because when you sleep on something, instead of, a reaction that's just instinctive, and I believe so much in the process. So find someone that you can process the challenge with. If you process stuff properly, you're generally going to have a better outcome. But it's almost like your positive mindset, you know. You just get up. Like if somebody cancels or somebody does this, or you just get going. And it's funny, but the media kind of business trained you for that, because you were always like on the hustle, you know, day in, day out, you know. And but you had a lot of wins. So kind of like you can't really, I mean, you can draw a line in the sand and give yourself a period of time, but I think instinctively, if you're following a process, then that's going to take a certain amount of time. But say you start a mentor relationship with someone, and you commit properly, and you prepare properly, and you respect the relationship and the time, and the person's the right fit for you, which they might or might not be. Say they're not the right fit, then you rather stop and start with someone else in terms of a proper mentorship. So that's why, I don't know about timelines, but I think, honestly, in your own mind, you've always got a timeline, because you're like not going to stick around.
So in my approach, I have a thing, and it was brought about by COVID, actually. At work, we do this, event in August called She Owns a Success. And I felt this one time around COVID days that we don't have forever to live. Literally, death was so close to all of us any day, from things that are out of your control. And so I started counting days, like how many days I've lived, and having this idea that today is a gift. No one is guaranteeing tomorrow, which is kind of an expression we know. People always say that, like, oh, time is so short. And mine is, time is enough. It's the surprise of when it's going to end that is always a surprise. So I think the thing that I give myself is that urgency, that if I think it and I feel it, I don't have the luxury of a year of thinking. So there's got to be a pace and a rhythm that I apply. I want to talk about the role of naysayers. So you've got this, you're reinventing yourself, and the family business has been wrapped up. You talk to a few friends or people in your inner circle, and then they're like, I don't think so. I mean, a negative person and a positive person has a benefit in terms of just shaping us. What role do naysayers play in your journey?
Look, you're always going to come across naysayers. In fact, the funniest one was my father. When he left our business, he said to me, "Good luck, you're going to need it." I was like, "Thank you."
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks
That's
for
a lot
that.
of belief coming from you.
But he knew. He knew what the challenge was going to be.
Ahead.
He actually did know. But the thing is that, when you're stubborn, which also kind of goes with resilience as well.
Positively said.
Positively, let's turn it into a positive thing.
Yes.
Then you don't really listen. You listen with one ear, I would say. And until you are ready to give up on something, I don't think you'll give it up if you're like an entrepreneur. Because for you, it's like the passion and the everything, and you can always see another opportunity for change and another possibility of success. So you always have that driving you in your mind. So you do listen to naysayers. I mean, I remember we introduced the QR code into the pages of the magazines because we wanted to make them like shop windows. And I was speaking to this very impressive guy who heads up media for Red Bull. And I met him through an organization I was involved in. And I told him about, this fantastic idea, and we're going to change the whole magazine landscape, with a QR code. And he was like, the QR code's dead, you know. And I came back a bit deflated. But, you know, we still did the QR code in the magazines. And now I see the QR code is not dead.
It's not dead.
So I always look at a QR code.
It's a title of a book.
I'm always laughing.
The QR code is not dead.
Yes.
Print died.
Lives
don't
on.
know, whatever.
The QR code lives on. So
Yeah.
I think naysayers are important because otherwise you'd just be hearing positive. And also with friends who love you and even family, like often they don't want to tell you the truth because the truth does hurt sometimes. So I think that, it's got a reason for being.
Yeah.
But you kind of, as I said, you like listen and then you carry on. And then you realize maybe they were right. But so what? You learned other things.
You learned other things, yeah. So how do you deal with getting alignment between what you have in mind and what is realistic? And I can tell you have huge ambition, huge self-belief. You're a dreamer like I am. What is your joining of the dots that must happen between the dream and reality?
So I think you've got to have balance. And it's such a sort of cliche. But having... You know, when I worked in our previous business, I came home at 6:30 or 7. I put my kids to bed. I left in the morning and dropped them off. And I thought that was normal. I just didn't kind of understand that I maybe can have both. There's a different way of working. But you have to be a lot more organized and smarter about it. So in terms of where I am now, at this stage of my life, I still want to work, and I love working. And I've always wanted to be financially independent because it gives you choices. And for me, it's not really an option. So just because I want to, not because I have to, but I want to. And it gives me so much. So, but I don't want to miss out on my kids growing up. And so that is quite a tricky balance if you're ambitious. Like, how much are you away? How much can you be away? You know, can your kids, are you going to be there if they need you, not just at the other end of a phone or in a different time zone? How much can you travel? You know, at this time, how much do you want to travel? How much can you play on a global landscape from South Africa? Like, that's always been my wish, is to be based locally, because this is where I love operating from South Africa and Africa. But I've always wanted to operate like with a global mindset. So that's another kind of intention, that once you lay it out there, you've got to be quite conscious if you want to have like all these things. If you just have one and you focus on that, then for me, I realized because of COVID and changing my career and my sort of situation, I can have both. And I never realized that before. And you know, it was so funny. I remember like feeling guilty about, you know, like I'd maybe pick the kids up from school when I was working in the other business, and I'd be like on my phone and millions of emails coming through and take them to the playground when they were younger, but never present again. And I just decided in this new career and business that I'm going to be present. So I suppose that's a no. It's a non-negotiable for me. But also my kids are old, and I think the role model as a working mom is really great for kids to see, you know, because as long as they know that you're there for them, and you are present when you're with them, you know, then like I have a nice opportunity, but that's come across my desk now, and it includes quite a bit more travel. So I asked my kids, how do you feel about it, you know? And my son said, are you going to be representing South Africa? I said, well, not really like in that way, but yes, I guess.
You will,
He said, oh, you must definitely do it then. And
that's beautiful.
So it's just, you know, you kind of have that dialogue with your kids. And then that they're part of the process. And also they are old enough to understand, and working parents are great parents, can be great parents.
Do you have a failure in your life that has been difficult to forget outside of business? You know, I've talked to some people not finishing a marathon, I remember talking to Tanya, and she said, I ran I think it was Japan, and it rained, and, something led to a cancellation, or something happened, and it took a while for her to get over that.
Yeah. Not really. I would say only, employing the wrong person is quite scarring when it doesn't work out. And, you go into any opportunity thinking, here's the opportunity, and we're all going in with the right intention.
Yeah.
But if it's the wrong fit, I think, I've had not many actually. We were really lucky. We had incredibly creative, talented, amazing people who we've mostly remained in touch with. But I think when you do employ somebody, especially because it's so personal and it's so difficult to manage when it doesn't work out. I don't know if that's a failure, but for me
But it's a scar. I mean, you're saying it's a deep scarring that
Yeah.
you've trusted someone and they
Yeah.
weren't the right fit
Yeah.
and they didn't
Yeah.
deliver to your
Yeah.
expectation. That's come up a lot in the conversations I've had, the mistake of hiring the wrong people. And for some people, it's been actually quite sometimes difficult to recover financially from entrusting the wrong people with the job to be done. How do you prepare your kids to be failure ready?
You prepare them to be independent, actually, even if you don't want them to be independent too soon or too independent.
Yeah.
But I think because we are all role models. I mean, obviously, to our kids. And I think preparing them to be independent, which I think is also a tricky dance. For example, I've got twins, and my son is now taking the My City bus and cycling with his crew and loving his newfound independence. And I'm kind of not ready for my daughter to be taking the My City bus all over town. And so I've not encouraged my son, but I've allowed him and, kind of supported his decision or whatever he wants to do that. And she knows, and she's like, this is totally sexist, she says to me, that I'm not allowing her to do it right away.
Yeah.
But you can give them independence in other ways.
Yeah.
But being conscious of, it's, for example, like fear. I wouldn't want my kids to grow up fearful, but they've got to be aware.
They've got to be aware.
And there's a difference between being aware and being fearful.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think sometimes, especially when there's a lot of crime, or you can end up with your kids being fearful, and I don't want that for my kids. And then I think future ready, absolutely global mindset. Because if they understand that the world, like, you can be based somewhere, especially these days, but you learn from engaging with people who come from other cultures. And I think that I've seen with my stepchildren as well as my kids, they do think globally. Also, my partner's Italian Greek, so they don't have a choice. They've got to think globally. But I do think being like globally ready and sort of the world's your oyster.
And they'll be in spaces where they are not known, where mom's name and dad's name doesn't mean much, but they've got to stand in their name. And that is future readiness.
The healthy self-esteem. Having a good moral compass, which is not so easy, but knowing what's right and wrong. It all sounds very, highfalutin and whatever, but it's like the little things with kids. As they, talking through, keeping like an open relationship with them and them being part of your decisions up to a point. I just think it's just, having like this as much as possible so that you actually continue to like each other.
If you were to look at the point around innovation and evolution in business, and you think about business, people who are running their own businesses now, launching brands, launching propositions, putting their names out there with their product, how would you advise them to be ready for disruption?
Sure.
Because you in the publishing business, no one could tell what would come. Until it came. And in the you had you had some ability to think the QR code, to use digital. And what is the reality is all businesses are disrupted at any time. And usually disruptions come from places you don't expect.
Yeah.
How would you coach that entrepreneur to be disruption ready?
Well, I think you've got to be super aware of timing, because you've got a certain period where, you can test out the theory and try something different. Like, for example, I mean, if we could have sold our business, but we didn't. So we sort of kept our business inside the family, and maybe we should have sold it or got a different partner with different advantages that would have brought to the business. And as they say, timing is everything, but it really is. So I think it's partnerships. Like, sometimes, you've got to keep looking for partnerships, which, as we know, partnerships are super tricky too. Finding the right partner and keeping aligned, but collaborating, partnerships, timing, all of those things that you can kind of ignore at your own peril.
At your own peril.
And then afterwards you look back and you're like, oh, maybe we should have actually entertained that proposition. But I think, again, what we were saying earlier is you've got to be using all of these new tools.
Yeah.
Because you can't come up with strategy if you don't really understand how your consumer's experience is changing. And to do that, you need to be a consumer. So, you can't just sort of stick in the boardroom and have people present you. You've actually got to feel it. And I think that was what was so interesting also about magazines, is everybody knew what it felt like to read a magazine. So it was such an easy business to actually produce content for and to build up that brand. But with digital, with AI, and that's another thing, is I would say, the company you keep. So make sure that you are not just operating in a vacuum as an entrepreneur or with your own business, but you are exploring opportunities alongside other people who are experts, like people who are steeped in AI, and you keep that chatting with them, you keep talking to them about opportunities, you keep trying to find opportunities where you can work together, but they are experts, and you're not an expert, and I'm not ever going to become an AI expert, but there are a lot of people that, especially, in other organizations, who I can learn from and apply that to my business, because this is the bottom line, is you have to remain relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you lose your relevance, then you're not going to succeed for much longer.
Yeah,
it's all about relevance.
Yeah.
And if you've got this opportunistic mindset, you're a strategic thinker. Like, it's not just execution, it's the strategy. Obviously, the execution is 100% very important, because without that, you're not going to get out the starting gates. But to have that strategic vision, you need to be inspired. You need to be watching things, looking at things, talking to people. Otherwise, you're not going to have any new ideas.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have the courage.
Yes.
To
follow
follow
that
find,
idea.
idea.
Yeah, I find, speaking of courage, that it takes courage to tell someone your ideas.
Yeah.
And there is often a fear of, they might steal my idea. So if I tell, that person this, and what would you say to get someone to just look beyond that and, I guess, trust that more than it doing the act of sharing and seeking input from other people, yes, there is that risk, but actually look at the benefit and focus on that?
I think you're always going to have that fear that once you've given an idea up for discussion or you present it, that someone can take it. And a lot of people get burnt by that, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because that idea can be kind of reshaped or reskinned and presented elsewhere, and maybe you don't even know it. But I don't think you've got a choice. I think that, if it's a really great idea, that's one thing. But as I just said, to actually bring that idea into a brand, into a business, into fruition is a totally different ball game. So an idea is just the very start of it, and I think that you you just have to go for it and trust your instinct, and you can't keep it to yourself because you're not even going to be able to find anyone to work with you if you're never going to talk about your idea.
That is true.
I guess it's also how you talk about it and how much you share. And, you know, NDAs, and everybody signs NDAs, and I mean, you're constantly signing an NDA if you're looking at a new business opportunity. But they're also quite hard to enforce.
Yeah.
So I think it's more you go in on that principle, and hopefully, like more often than not, your instinct about who you approach, who you trust, you know, pays off.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a nasty lesson.
Yeah. I want to talk about the new year, 2026. How do you prepare yourself? Do you have like a routine? I know some of my friends go to silent retreats and, you know, no phone zone, or holiday travel and thinking time. How do you set Julia up to start the year?
I can't believe it's like already where we are and how quickly the year went. So I think once I get over my shock, the year's gone by already so quickly. But I think the main thing for me is to start the next year with intention. You know, so I do have a bit of a habit of just saying yes, and then I find myself in that situation and then thinking about it afterwards. But I think I'm going to have quite a busy year next year. And no, I not think, I know. So I've kind of been working out how to be more selective, more careful with my own time, especially like carving out enough time for myself instead of just saying yes to everything. And that does come back to intention. So my word's going to be absolutely intention.
Yes.
You better call me on it.
Yes, I will. And then as we wrap up, I want to just ask you to reflect on corporate politics and how one should look to navigate corporate politics, especially from a point of view of being a very strong female leader or a very strong leader.
Yeah. So again,
so first, what is corporate politics to you? How would you define corporate politics? Because a lot of people understand it differently.
Like family politics, but not your family? No. I mean, I remember in one of the podcasts they were saying it's not your family.
Yes,
you know?
Yes. There was Sebastian. It's like, I do not believe work colleagues are family.
I know.
Yes.
And everyone says they should be.
No,
they're not.
They're not.
So I think the thing is, one thing I also learned, because we had so many women in our business, it was mostly run by women. I think we had like 10 men, these poor guys, and the rest were all very ambitious, dynamic women. But so people always used to say, how do you like navigate being a woman in business? I was like, it's quite easy because we only really work with mostly women. But the thing that I've noticed about women is they don't think they can sit at the top table necessarily. There is that imposter syndrome. And I think you've got to not want to sit anywhere else except at the top table.
That's true.
And not in a pushy way at all, but just in a way that, you know, I've worked with a lot of men, not necessarily in our business, but in different organizations. And I wouldn't want to be in a women's only organization. I want to be in a male and female organization because we both have different things to bring, different perspectives, different nuanced understanding of a situation, which, you know, is great to have that instead of, again, you know, just a tunnel where you just speak to yourself. So I would say with corporate politics, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to bring value to a business. And that's not just passion and commitment. That's actually what the business needs. And you've got to make it your business to understand what the business needs. It's also got to work for you because that's the only way you're going to bring real value. And, you know, just lean in. Like anything, if you don't lean in, you get less out. And I've just always found that. Like the more I lean in,
the more you get.
The more I get out.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to be accountable. You know, and one's got to be, you've got to be you've got to be honest about what you're good at and what you're not, and listen to the input. But really it's about the top table and having a voice, a considered voice, an informed voice. And then you're the best employee in the world because, I mean, you just creating all this wonderful momentum for the business.
Yeah. And people are drawn
Yeah,
towards the people who are leaning in,
yeah,
doing their jobs,
yeah,
performing. And so there's a less dependency on being politically good
yeah,
and navigating.
yeah.
I mean, one of the things I said is, you know, you are successful, obviously, if you understand the political dynamics, but your career trajectory really requires you to do the thing you are there to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
But I do think that, you know, corporate politics can be the biggest time waster. And I think as you get older, and especially having worked for myself most of my life, I mean, well, I wasn't working for myself, I was working for a family business, but now I work for myself. I just don't want to waste my time. And I know that sounds a bit like black and white, but it's like, you know, all these chats and all this gossip and all this. And it was funny because, you know, often when you're on the management side, you don't hear all the gossip and you're not around the water cooler. And there's this
Actually,
whole
the gossip, they shut up and walk past, you know.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
"No, don't change your conversation. It's
Yeah,
just me.
yeah,
You know, I'm more
yeah.
curious if they
Yeah.
stop talking
Yes.
because you're walking past.
And also speaking about the end of the year, you know, like this, the
Yeah.
end of the year staff party, it's like I always knew that like I was there, but then as soon as I left, everyone had fun.
The real party
Yeah,
started.
and I understood that.
Yeah,
And so I think it's
yeah.
like, don't get drawn into corporate politics, that it actually isn't good for you. You know, just because people love to stir and they love like rabbit holes, actually. I think I've discovered people just love rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's easier than sometimes dealing with a work problem, but it's just a lot of noise. And as you get older and more clear that like when I'm at work, I want to work. And I want to see something happen. I want to build something. I want to be part of a positive group of people, everybody bringing their A game. Also a supportive environment because we are human beings. We're not robots. But at the end of the day, I don't want to really waste my time.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many other better ways of wasting my time.
Than to be entangled
Yes.
in corporate politics. Wow, we come to the end of our conversation.
Already.
Thank you so much, Julia.
Pleasure.
How was
Thank
that?
you for having me.
Cheers to failure, and we
Yeah.
talked about it.
Lovely. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.